Let's get to the reason we're all here tonight. Christian Idiodi. I'm super excited to have him back again to speak at our group. He gave a great talk last time. It's always great to hear him speak. He is a partner at Silicon Valley Product Group, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with. Before that, he was a product leader at Merrill Corporation, Snag a Job, and CareerBuilder. His Twitter handle's at @Idiodi. And he's going to give us a talk that I haven't heard before I'm excited about, which is how to set up your product teams for success. So with that, Christian, welcome, and please take it away.
Thank you, Dan. Wonderful. Well, quick introduction. I think Dan did a great introduction. I am one of the partners at the Silicon Valley Product Group. And if you follow our work, we really spend our time trying to help companies learn how to build products customers love. We're authors of the book Inspired, Empowered, and Loved with Marty Cagan. We're coming out with a new book next year, Transformed, which is really focused on helping customers or companies move to the product operating model. And that's where we share firsthand stories of our journey in transforming companies. Today, I really want to talk about one of probably my favorite topics in my career. I think people have often heard me say many people don't start a company, join a company with everything they need to be to succeed. They can be successful regardless of how successful they've been in the past. And the argument is really about this topic of onboarding product managers or onboarding product teams, or in short, onboarding anyone in a company. I wanted to make this talk a little broader because I don't really think onboarding really pertains only to product teams. It's really how do you set individuals and teams up for success. Now, I want to start by talking about why I care about onboarding and really why my focus has been on onboarding as a specific aspect of getting teams and individuals set up for success. First, I think we all agree that hiring people is hard in the first place. Recruiting, finding talent, building a team of people to go effectively deliver in solving a problem or working on any task is very hard. There's a lot that goes into trying to replace a hire or fill a position or fill a gap you might have in your team. Most companies often fail at this right from the beginning because hiring managers outsource the work of hiring to a group of people they might call recruiters or HR as a function. They kind of really outsource the responsibility of building their team to someone else. But when you recognize that there's a lot of work that goes into hiring or finding talent, recruiting talent, sourcing talent, and getting them on the team, you have to understand that their success is one that is imperative for your organization to yield results. So I am talking about the importance of the people decisions you make and the impact on your work. Because it's a challenging process, setting them on for success is mission critical. But here's the deal. Your job description, probably all job descriptions, are crap. Why? Because I really haven't met anybody that only does what's in their job description. In short, there are so many things that cannot be articulated in a job description. How do you write something like a product manager is going to be in a meeting for 80 hours a week and have no life? I mean, how do you describe that? How do you describe the nuances or the day-to-day things that may occur in a work environment? Job descriptions are often written by a manager of the job or by maybe sometimes a HR group or from some canned system. They are rarely written by the actual person that does the job. So they often do not reflect the actual realities and intricacies of actually doing the job. Several real aspects of the work we do may be confidential or very specific to our organizations, so they are not shared in your job descriptions. Now, why am I calling this out? What people actually do is very different from what they are recruited to do, what is advertised to them that they are going to do. In general sense, a product manager in one company is not the same as a product manager in another, particularly because the companies themselves are different. The cultures are different. What's also interesting is that we don't capture our common intent, our strategic context in any part of our recruiting or hiring process. Most of the things with our strategy and our goals are confidential. Just imagine that the first time somebody knows the objective is during a wartime. You don't understand the why. You don't understand where you're going. You don't understand the plan to get there. You don't even understand how success is measured and even how we make decisions on what we focus on. These things are not captured in the recruiting process. I'm calling these elements out because I want you to see what leads to failure in individuals and teams in organizations, why they are not set up for success. Now, here's one of much importance for me. You are hired to do a job and not to learn the job. But the question is, when did you practice for this job? There is no other job in the planet that can prepare you perfectly for your current job. All a job can do is equip you to play, but they can rarely equip you to win. Winning means you have to practice within the environment that you will be playing in. No other company is the current company a new hire will be coming into. One of the things I love about trying to practice prior to doing a job is because it's the only time you have the right to sit on the bench. When you start a job, you have this window of time where people can kind of let you talk around, learn the ropes, understand things, but very quickly you're thrown into a wartime scenario because every day is game day in the corporate world. I'm not talking about training. There are plenty of good training options that companies do. Training is a discrete period of time. Practice is ongoing. You have to create space for practice, for playbook execution, for game plans. No professional at any game can execute at a high level without practice. So the underlying question for me is, when we wonder why are our teams not performing at a high level, often the questions I ask managers and leaders is, where and when did we create space or time to practice? Okay. The last point for me is always about trust. This one has always been a fun journey for me when I watch and observe organizations and I say, I trust you, but you don't trust me in this sense. You think about it. Dan is a new product manager at a company. Dan joins this company. Maybe Dan was the greatest product manager at Google or at Amazon or at LinkedIn or Netflix. Dan leaves this job that is paying him a salary. He goes on to LinkedIn. The first day he starts the job and he says something like, I am super excited to be joining the amazing people and teams at this new company X. He's super excited. He has given up a good paying job, joined an organization without the organization paying him first. I mean, I don't know of anybody that gets paid the very first day of their job. He's never received the salary for this. He goes up and he's super excited. Here's the interesting part of this dilemma. Nobody in the new company trusts Dan. Mostly because they don't know him. They've probably seen a resume. They've probably seen some information about it. Maybe somebody sent an announcement. We're going to be hiring Dan as a great product manager. He did all of these things here. Everybody says, well, what we do know is that Dan knows nothing about our company. He knows nothing about how we work here. He knows nothing about how we make decisions. But I'm glad he's great as an athlete. He's great at playing the game. And I cannot look forward to having him here. Dan has a low level of trust from the organization and his team, but he has a high level of trust for the company. It is a significant waste for us to not take Dan at his highest trust level and equip him with what he needs to succeed. What many companies do is they get in this new hire and they say, well, Dan is great. He worked at Amazon and LinkedIn and Netflix and he's fantastic. Dan, join the team. And Dan, go start building products. Now, Dan is smart enough to know what he doesn't know. He knows that he doesn't really know anything about the team dynamics, how we work here, who the players are. Dan is a little uneasy about how he can make a decision on what to do. The team that Dan is in also recognizes that Dan knows nothing. But they are watching Dan. Maybe they can make an excuse for him when he makes a bad mistake. in Dan's uneasiness, the very first time a leader or an executive comes by and says, Dan, let us build this new app. Dan says, oh, that's a great idea. Let's jump on it. Why? Because Dan needs to transfer that leader's competence to his own. What has Dan just done? He's giving up his empowerment. Because now he has taken directions from someone else because he does not know what the best decision is. This is a very common cycle in many companies. We throw individuals into jobs to perform at a high level without equipping them with the necessary things they need to succeed. I love this quote by Sarah Witzel. She's a business manager at Barrett Systems, which is, you kind of lose the energy of a new hire through poor onboarding. New hires kind of come in with this zeal. Can you imagine the amount of things we can make a new hire do on day one? Some companies do a drug test, a blood test, fill out 20 pages of paperwork, run around the building. People just go freely doing these things. They are coming in with such an eagerness, wanting to leverage their potential, to bring their experience and expertise to help a company succeed. And all the company does, fill out the paperwork, go sit on your desk, go get started. And so when people ask me, it's like, why do you focus on onboarding as a core aspect? I said, well, we never recruited somebody to understand the job. We don't hire people to learn the job. We want them to do the job. I need to create a space for them to practice. But more importantly, this is the best time because they have the trust we need, the foundational, vulnerable trust we need to equip them with what they need to succeed. So people kind of talk about why did I focus on a boot camp or an onboarding intensive as really my favorite technique for setting teams up for success. I first came across the concept of a boot camp from a friend of mine who is a general in the US Marine Corps. And if you think about it, elite teams have one thing in common. In the military, it's called a spirit de corps. For most civilians, that translation is the sense of camaraderie, a sense of loyalty, and a sense of pride that exists within any military group. For the Marines, this is defined as shared goals. Every member understands the group objectives, but also their role in achieving this. My friend, this general, was trying to recruit me to join the military. It's like, hey, you could come at an officer level and work in an intelligence unit. And I was like, whoa. I have heard to join the military, you have to do that thing called boot camp. And I'm old, man. I can't be running around and people screaming at me and climbing mountains and rocks and stuff like that. And, he said, well, Christian, people often think that the boot camp is only about physical fitness, making sure you have the fitness to be able to do the work at hand. But he started to break down some elements that I really didn't think about. He said, people that go through a boot camp have the closest relationships throughout their military career. It's like a graduating class of people, and they build authentic relationships because they learned together. He says this is where we share our common intent, people to understand the purpose, the meaning, the goals we have in the military. You see, in the Marines, the boot camp lasts 13 weeks. Do you know how long the boot camp is for the Navy SEALs? Boot camp doubles, 26 weeks. To an outside observer, this is very confusing. You're like, SEALs are like the top performers in every part of the military coming together. Shouldn't they require less time to train in their boot camp? Why do they require more time? No, because no matter how competent you are in a previous role, no matter what organization, in this case, no matter what military unit you came from, no matter how many years of experience, no matter how much expertise you have, you don't know the current organization you are playing in. You've never practiced, you've never tackled the work within this environment. You don't know its culture, its strategy, its vision. You don't know the people or the dynamics or how things work. This is why a boot camp needs to last longer than a few days. He said something that struck me around it. He said, nobody wants to go into battle with someone who isn't ready. Nobody wants to go into a war and have a question in their head. Does Dan know how to use a gun? Would he make a mistake and shoot me? And it's like, how do people in the military trust other people in the military very easily? It's because they all went through the same rigorous training and preparation. That boot camp approach, that onboarding approach, normalizes your sense like, if Dan is here with me, I know what Dan went through, and I know that Dan is equipped to do the work. You only want to fight alongside people who have a common intent and purpose, but more importantly, are prepared to do the job, right? So, for many people, the science actually says, onboarding should be like a 90-day period, like 3 months. So what I've tried to do in my work is that how can I leverage a 2-week period of time to bring new hires together and to increase their level of competency so that they are productive members of the team while continuing to learn. Now, something that is interesting, I'll throw this out as a side note here. It might interest you. Did you know that the very same questions that a child will have on the very first day of kindergarten are the exact same questions a new hire will have on their first day of the job? It was a very interesting study when I kind of read this. When a child goes to school for the very first time, the top questions they have in their mind: is my teacher going to be nice? Who will be my friend here? What's expected of me? Is the work going to be hard? They often say, like, where do I sit? And my goodness, where is the bathroom? These are the things going through the head of a kindergartner. Interestingly enough, the science actually suggests on our very first day in a new job, we still use the exact same mental model. For adults, it's something like, is my boss a jerk? Who is going to be my friend at work? How do I fit in? What is the work really like? What is expected of me? And really the question of like, where is the bathroom is often a real question on the first day at work. But you kind of think about how callously we take the onboarding or preparation of people. How confident can we actually know that we've answered those questions for an individual on the first day of work? The unfortunate dynamic is that when you become a professional, you lose out on saying things like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I need help, tell me more. And people make a lot of assumptions in your onboarding. But I'm calling out that these questions still exist in every new environment. So the elements I always have in a boot camp, and I want to understand this foundationally. Part of what I want to do with this talk is break down every single thing I would do in a boot camp to equip people. So I'm building the case for why I care about onboarding, why I care about the boot camp approach, and then I'm going to go into what we do, right? So the things I want to cover and get out in the core of a boot camp, the military calls common intent. We call it in our world strategic context, right? Clarity and alignment on our mission, on our vision, and our path to making that vision a reality. Understanding our historical context is important as well, right? That is kind of what empowers teams. Understanding where you are going, what's important now, what comes next, how do we measure success? So key aspect of what I want people leaving boot camp with is strategic context. Next piece is, I don't take for granted relationships. To build trust, new PMs have to know people and be known to people. The PM has no direct reports, but a very large scope of influence. Most people in an organization do that, not by power, but by influence. Sometimes they might even have a team to lead in some roles, an infinite amount of customers, a growing number of stakeholders, none of which are nice and polite. They are screaming at you. When do people have time to build real authentic relationships, a deep understanding of their ecosystem or environment in which they play? I also care about practice. And I mentioned before, where in an organization, at what time do we practice? Do we practice discovery techniques, right? Do we practice how we decide what to do? How do we demonstrate to a new product person the techniques that have been successful in a company and what's working and what will not work? The principles that guide us, the values that guide us. Where do we start to leverage that trust that they came in with and build upon it? Most product people work in a team. They work with a designer and a lead engineer. Think about the learning curve of understanding every interpersonal style. What we often do is we throw a new hire into a team, and then we come back a couple of months later and say, can you imagine, this team is struggling with communication. This team is struggling with teamwork. This team is struggling with execution. When failing to realize that the dynamics of the team changes every time you throw somebody new into it. I talked about the job description. Nobody does only their job description. In many ways, what you truly do in a job differs from what is described. Or at the very best, you don't only do your job description. So how do we really have people understand what the job is before they are doing the job? The group Eddie kind of calls their onboarding 4 C's. Compliance, the core aspects of things you need to know to be equipped, kind of your legal compliance checklist of things you knew and your paperwork and all of that you need to do to be onboarded. Clarity, kind of your deep understanding of the role, a deep understanding of what's expected of you, a deep understanding of what the organization demands from you. Culture, the language, the behaviors, the environment in which you're going to do those things, understanding those things. And then connection, kind of back to the relationships, the dynamic, the teamwork that you need to solve these problems. When you play with these elements of the bootcamp, these are some of the things you can tackle or address. Clarity from people about how decisions are made, understanding what's important to a company, having some clarity about what works well and what doesn't, how you're getting people to trust me, getting through some of those dynamics in a bootcamp. Now, I want to share some interesting tools that have helped me along the way, or kind of frameworks. The first is what I always call the anchor model I use when I'm coaching or onboarding teams. I kind of believe in this see, do, teach kind of methodology, in that people need to see something, what good work looks like. People need to do good work, and that the ultimate sense of competency is when somebody can teach other people to do good work. That it's impossible to do good work if you haven't seen what good work looks like, right? And you cannot teach good work without doing good work yourself. So in some ways, I want to make this point clear. And I say that for almost every level of leadership, almost every team that I see struggle. When someone says, why do the leaders not have a good vision? I say, have the leaders seen a good vision? Most people have not seen a good vision. Most people have not seen a good strategy. Or it's like, why don't we experience good coaching in this company? The number one reason why people don't give good coaching to their teams is because they themselves have not experienced good coaching. I was at a company the other day, and the CEO was in a meeting and just started screaming at all of his direct reports loudly, and just like, you better get this done, using curse words and swearing in the meeting. And I said to the CEO, can I talk outside? I said, well, first of all, I don't think I can be here. I don't think this is a good environment for a healthy environment, the way you're treating your people. And he's like, what's wrong with this? This is how my manager used to scream at me. And look at me now. I'm the CEO. And I said to him, well, would it be okay if I went in there and I tried to communicate to your team what you wanted in a different way? He said, sure, let me see what that looks like, Well, I said, what would you like to communicate? He told me. I kind of went in there and I kind of reset the tone. And I said, hey, everybody, let me explain why we want to do this. Let me explain why. And then I asked the team for feedback. I said, tell me, your CEO kind of told you and screamed at everybody about what needed to be done. This was how I did it. Give us feedback about what worked well and what didn't. And the team said, well, the CEO does this all the time, and we just do what he says. But the way you explained it, we understood why we should do it. And we could also see many things we could also be doing to improve the environment. This was the very first time the CEO called me outside and said, this is the very first time I've seen something else that could work. Never experienced what an alternative could look like. So for any form of good and work to be done in an environment, you need people to see what good work looks like. They also need to do good work in an environment they can coach, where they can practice good work and get feedback on it so that they can be good at it. But the ultimate test of competency, I always say, is when you can teach it. Now, the second thing that I always use as a leader, as a manager with teams is what I call anchor dates. Okay. It's important that you recognize that there are certain dates that are important in a new hire's coming onto a company. These dates create a psychological opportunity for you to really get deep in building trust, but also in creating a management philosophy that you can use to anchor your new hire. The first day on the job is absolutely mission critical. Like I explained before, this is the day that the employee has the highest trust for the company. The reason being, they don't know all of your junk. They don't know all of the problems. They have been sold the dream. The company is awesome. They've read all of the internet stuff. In short, they've used ChatGPT to know that you are growing, your growth rate. They've seen all the happiness about the company. They're excited. Highest trust. You don't waste that day. It's a significant day for building relationships, being vulnerable, leveraging strengths and accountability. I'll talk about that. The end of the first week is also a significant time for a new hire. It is actually the first time they can decompress what they have gone through with somebody that is not in their immediate family, like with friends and family. What do people say? Oh, this was your first week at the job. How was your first week? Good managers are very good at feeding new employees of what they should say as a response to that answer. You cannot waste that opportunity. If you started on a Monday, that Friday, you need to have a one-on-one to understand how they are feeling and to feed them what they should feel. The first paycheck, another important date. Why? Because this is the first time somebody tries to put some sense of value to their work. I have been at this company for 2 weeks. This is a painful, annoying, crazy job. But hold up here, that paycheck looks great. I don't mind that painful, annoying work. Or, can you imagine I did nothing and I got paid this high? This is a very interesting time of evaluation for people. And so, I call these dates out because when I think about my onboarding plan, I write out all of these dates for a new hire. And I have very specific one-on-ones that I do on those dates to anchor employees. Your first month in matters, kind of as an evaluation and a coaching, and also your first quarter too as well. Okay, so let's jump into the onboarding plan, right? This is important. Onboarding does not start on the first day of the job. I know some companies call this pre-boarding, they call it all this kind of stuff. No, I say onboarding starts on the very first day you make the offer to join the company. I am not talking about onboarding as new hire orientation. That's the corporate stuff for, let me tell you, the history of the company and all of our cool stuff here. What am I calling out? What is onboarding? Equipping a new hire with the things they need to execute at the level of competency that is expected by the organization. So prior to the first day of starting on the company, onboarding has started for me. I want to make sure all of the logistics and welcome package items are prepared. I have book recommendations and reading items for people. People say, oh, when you come on the first day, I give you a book. No, I'm not giving you a book on the first day. I want you to do a job. This is not the place this is not a school. This is a job. So if there are things I want you to read, materials I want you to learn, I give them to you way before you start the job. Like, what else are you doing in that time frame? You trust me too. Read Inspired. Read the Lean Playbook. Read the Lean Start. Read all these books. Are you seeing? That is when I am equipping you with those things to read. Don't want you doing that in the office. I want you walking in the office. I always write a personal handwritten card to every single hire that I have. I won't put a gift card in there to have them be able to shop for things for their decks or their office space. If people are working remote, I send them welcome swag in some ways, way before their first official date. I am reinforcing the foundation of trust you will have on your first day, right? A week beforehand, I have a call with you, kind of as an individual manager. I create a checklist for them. Where do you park? Who will greet you at the door? Where are you going to sit? All of your contact information. I do all of that stuff way before you even start on the job. Yes, one of the other things I do in onboarding before the first day, I schedule calls with key leaders in the company prior to you starting in the company. Wait, you're starting a job, then I want to spend the first 90 days of your time running around in meetings. No, you're doing that way before. I'm scheduling time with the leader of design, the leader of engineering. What am I trying to send a message of? It's one leadership team, one welcome, one commitment to you. I'm building relationships, because the first day you come to the job, I don't want you saying, who is the boss? Who is that? Where things are? You have a group of people welcoming you to the company. So I'm calling out here that, to set your teams up for success, you've got to start before they start. So my 2-week bootcamp is designed in this way. The first week is focused on the individual. The second week is focused on the individual within the team. Because product work requires teamwork. Like most companies, individuals work in teams. So I spend the first week on bootcamp of getting the individual prepared personally and professionally, and the second week on the individual working within the team. To be clear, this methodology is impossible to fail. What it means is not that the product person will hit home runs all the time. It just means that they will never strike out. That's kind of the mindset I'm going with this. The first day on the job, for me, is really about relationships and trust. So if I were getting deep on this, if you think about this, job interviews don't really tell you much about the person. I know people are always like, do all these interviews, all of these assessments. Everybody reads all of the books to how to answer an interview question, what to say and stuff. In short, the manager is reading the same book and like listening to what answer to listen for. This is really, people are pretending to be who you want them to be. And you are pretending to be who you need to be so that you can attract them. So what really needs to happen here is you need to level set of what it will look like day to day. For trust, there are 3 aspects I always talk about: building trust between the new hire and the manager, building trust between the new hire and the team, and building trust between the new hire and the company. On the very first day of the job, the only person that probably knows you the best in the company is the person that hired you. The team doesn't know you as well. The company doesn't know you as well. And so we now have to bridge the gap of trust. So what I always want to do is I want to remind people why they were hired. This is significantly important. Most people fail to recognize that the hiring of an individual is not to duplicate what you already have, but to fill a gap you do not, or to increase the level of competency or execution at a specific level. You're not hiring people because of their weakness. You're not saying, oh, well, Dan is terrible at communication. Let's make him our chief communications officer. You're saying he's great at delivering or building products. Let's hire him as a product manager. He's great at prototyping. Let's hire him at... You are bringing his strengths into the organization, leveraging his experience and expertise to enable your team to succeed. So you really have to spend the time really having people anchor on those strengths, because that's what you want them to contribute to the team. Debbie Meredith kind of makes this argument, look, teams cannot work without trust. It's really the magic of successful product companies, working together to achieve way more than an individual can on their own. So if I look at a week 1 for me, okay, the first day is really about trust and relationships. The second day is really around context and in the sense of understanding your strategic context, your mission, your vision, your goals, your strategy, how we measure success. The third day is really focused on decisions and focus on how we decide what to do. On day 5, we're focused on connecting them with the organization and with stakeholders. And we spend the 5th day really trying to figure out how they share and learn in some ways. The following week is really all about working with the team. But I want to give you an example of an actual framework that I use here. In here. So kind of a week 1 framework. I love this Steve Covey's 7 Habits of Effective Teams, effective people. And the real goal for me on the first week is I want to accelerate an individual's path to productivity and effectiveness in their new role. That's my very selfish goal as a hire. So I use this same framework and say, okay, I've got my first 7 days as an example. And if you follow the 7 habits, the first habit is be proactive. What do I do with that kind of stuff here? I'm focused on empowered teams, kind of to my point. Why are you here? Why do we need you? What are your strengths to contribute? That's really the focus of that day. The second habit, begin with the end in mind. I am trying to share personal context, your vision, our vision, the strategy, the goals. I do this from a company level and I do this from an individual level. So I'm using this to help you see the structure of how you build an agenda for your onboarding product. This is a real example of how I have done it, right? So I'm creating goals for my onboarding program, empower teams context, the third day, putting first things first. How do we create focus? How do we look at your time? How do you identify what's urgent versus important? What's urgent versus important for the company? What are we focused on? See, at the company level and at the individual level. This is what I'm doing as a manager. I'm trying to equip you. Day 4, we're thinking win-win, right? I'm going into decision-making. What the influencers in our organization, the level of interest versus the level of influence from different stakeholders, the dynamics of how things work within the company, big aspect of it. I also do that individually, at the team level, and at the company level. Day 5 is really focused on, seek first to be understood, to understand before you're understood. This is really about communication, listening, presentation skills, knowing what you can't know. How do we do discovery within this environment? How do we create a deep understanding of the customers, the business, the industry? You see, all of this is very different from your new hire onboarding paperwork, systems, tools, processes in here. I am going deep into how to be successful and productive within this company. The 6 were synergized. So this is why I start to bring in the team. And we talk about how we work together to solve our problems, how we tackle meetings, right? And we spend kind of really the 7th day on self-care, work-life balance, team management in some ways. Okay. I have an example here of a real onboarding checklist I have from a that I have used. It is a real example of a real new hire. From day 1, the first 30 days, I do include tools and systems and processes that you can go through. So it's a very, very packed first week for a new hire. A big part of it is also visibility. I spend time as an individual head of product with a new individual hire. I walk around the entire company with them. Why is that important? Because people trust me, the leader of product, but they don't know this new hire. And it's very awkward for that new hire to go introduce themselves to everybody. When people see me working with that new hire, I am sharing or extending my trust to that new individual. They come with me to meetings I might have. I introduce them to people. Very important aspect of building a sense of trust and comfort within the company. Again, what's the singular goal in my first week? I am accelerating an individual's space to productivity and effectiveness. Okay. The second week, I start to move to the team. Why? Because when you add a new person to the team, you change the dynamic of the team. Week 2 is really all about the new hire working within the team. Prior to you starting, I always love a buddy system. Because remember that kindergarten question, who will be my friend at work? Who is my best friend? Who will like me? What's expected of me? I find somebody in the company. And mostly what I am doing is I am looking for complementary skills or personalities when I'm looking to assign a buddy to a new hire. This new buddy is responsible for showing you things that are weird to teach in a class or in a forum. Things like, where is the bathroom? Where do I go out for a break? What's the fastest way to the exit? What's the best way to get rid of a printer that is jammed? Those kind of little nuanced things. And I equip the body with all of these types of questions because these are the things that are in the heads of new people that they quite can't figure out. Okay. I'm spending a lot of time really focused on how teams work together to solve a problem, not how an individual contributes to that role. I should have done that in the first week. Your real work is not what you do as an individual. Your real work is what you do as an individual within a team. I want people to spend time understanding the strengths of everyone in the team. So an example for week 2 is I'm focused on collaboration and teamwork and time management on the first 2 days. I focus really my last few days of my bootcamp on opportunities for me to assess, develop, and coach people working on a team. Here is the sweet part for me for week 2. The second week of the boot camp is practice week. This is the most fun. Practice is not just for the individual that is new. It's for the entire team they will work on. I pull the entire team that you're going to work on. They don't spend the whole day in the boot camp. They spend half day that week onboarding their new hire. They share in the responsibility of onboarding. Think about this. In many cases, the very first time you meet an individual on a team often looks like wartime. Hey, Dan is a new hire. He came here. Dan, here's the team. Go. Dan goes into a team meeting. He doesn't know anybody there. Everybody go around and introduce yourself to Dan. Dan is new here. Then the meeting gets into it. It's heated and it's tough. Dan is quiet because he knows he has no right to say something in the meeting because everybody knows he's new. Also, the second he says something for the first time, everybody is judging him for it. Like, Dan really doesn't know much. Let me explain to you what things are. And then in the meeting, Susan screams at him and Kristen is crying. Dan is freaking out. What's going on here? What does this mean? We can't expect that the very first time people understand team dynamics should be wartime scenarios. We have to create a place for them to practice. So what I do in week 2 is I actually want the teams to practice working together. I don't want you being in the office playing games about building trust and how to do it. I want you working and delivering results. But I need to create a place and a space for you to build trust, get to understand each other, tackle things like how do we communicate well? What are the dynamics? What does it mean when Susan is crying? What does it mean when Joe is screaming? You know, how do we do in meetings? How do we plan together? How do we collaborate together? The mechanics of how a team solves problems are all the same. Collaborative problem solving is what I want you to practice, how we do experimentation and iteration. One of my favorite techniques in practicing discovery with the team is like a discovery sprint. So what I'm doing here with the team is I'm saying, the team, people say, well, the team is distracted. They are meant to be working on things. You pull them out, they stop. I say, no. They are giving me like 30 minutes every day that week to work and practice with a new person that is coming on their team in the manner that they will be working with in the real world. So a design sprint, what it does is it time boxes discovery into 1 week, as an example. And I'm using this way to say, if you're design, you can do a design sprint. If you're in engineering, you can do a POC type of sprint. If you're even working in other functions, find a way to simulate what a real world scenario will look like. So in this example here, I give them a real problem they will face. In short, I bring in other stakeholders to participate in making this scenario look as real as possible. On Monday, we focus on framing the problem. On Tuesday, we all sketch a solution to the problem. On Wednesday, we kind of decide which solution is the best. We put in our feedback. On Thursday, we are out there prototyping it. On Friday, we are testing it with real customers. I'm doing this in onboarding. Why is this super important? This is the best time for you to understand the dynamics that will affect the productivity of the team. Because you want to see how the roles shift within the team. Communication goes, how true collaboration, the assignment of work, delegation, how conflict is managed. You want to practice presentation skills, stakeholder feedback, present. This is the time to give feedback to critical. I am using this time as a way to uncover the dynamics in here. The very first day a new hire gets into the team to do their work in the real world, the team should be excited about Dan, the new hire, because they've seen Dan in practice. They've seen Dan do amazing things in practice. Practice is safe. You can make mistakes. You can do stuff. But you're like, man, Dan came from Netflix and worked at Amazon. Did you know this? He's super cool. Look at the cool ideas he had. They've learned about that. They are excited for his contributions in practice. This is what leadership does. Bill Campbell kind of argues, that, leadership is about recognizing the greatness in everyone. And your job is really about creating an environment for that greatness to emerge. I take this absolutely seriously, that my job as a leader is all about creating an environment for teams to succeed and for individuals to thrive, leveraging their strengths, leveraging their experience and their expertise. They cannot do that without being properly equipped and set up to do so. The 2 weeks of time I spent in onboarding people leads to incremental value and time saved. Most companies, it takes in excess of 6 months to get productivity from a new hire because nobody took the time to equip them up front and to practice the things they need to try. People are discovering what they need to know while they are expected to know it. For leaders, this job is coaching. What I do on week 2 when teams are practicing working together, I say, well, Dan, this is your new team. We do fun exercises together, trust exercises, but we're going to work on a real problem. This is an example of exactly what your team will be working on. Oh, we're building an API integration for this mobile app team. All right, here's the problem. Go. They do everything they do. They do the stand-up, the sprint planning. Dan is practicing with the team. As a leader, I am assessing Dan. I'm saying, okay, I'm seeing how Dan is working in this place. You know, that's what we do as a leader if you want to coach a person. It's all about getting you to competence. What does Dan need to know to do well on this team? What level of competency is expected from Dan? I can get feedback from the team members before Dan is in a real world scenario. What I can now do with this is create a coaching plan because I can do a very pointed gap analysis. I can say, okay, not only did I know from Dan's resume and from hiring Dan, that Dan might have some work to do on his presentation skills. But I can now see from observing him and from the feedback from the team that this is a level thing I need to focus on with Dan. Because my job is not to do Dan's job. My job as a leader is to get Dan better at doing his job. His job is to execute the job. My job is to get him better at the job. So it's always the best time. Because remember, Dan has the highest amount of trust for me. He just joined the company. On the day that Dan receives his first paycheck, I always present Dan with his coaching plan. I know it feels like a psychological game here, but think about it. On the day Dan gets his pay, he has a choice to make. Is this job worth the squeeze? Is it worth the stress? Yes, I said in the salary, but this is actually happening. I'm here. I'm excited to be here. But look at this. There's still a whole lot more for me to learn, a whole lot more for me to improve on. And the company is invested in doing this. You spend your time really in this stage creating and crafting your coaching plan for Dan because he's here with you as a new hire. You need to understand his opportunities. You need to understand the competencies that are needed for the job. You need to assess them, understand the gaps, and create a plan to improve them. When you spend time with a new hire, you are probably doing one-on-ones every single day. Because the level of competency of a new hire is very low. Remember, I said, regardless of what you've done in the past, we don't trust you. Not because you're not good, but because we don't know that you are good. The only way we can tell if somebody is good at something is to test them. People do it all the time. What is 1 + 1? 2. That's how I know you know 1 + 1 is 2. I literally just asked you. If you say another answer, I'm like, he's not good at math. Organizations, teams, they do this constantly. So what I need to do is I need to spend time not only to equip you a level of competency, but the level that people perceive you to be competent. I onboard the entire product team, product managers, engineering, design. The leaders of those teams participate in the onboarding. I train other leaders on how to onboard people. It is a universal truth in companies I work with that when you come out of a 2-week bootcamp, you are ready to go to war. It is the investment an organization will make Because what we can get out of that hire ready and prepared after going through a bootcamp is exponentially higher than we can if we just threw them in to learn those things in one time. So you got to do more one-on-ones with new hires. I'm talking every day because I have to get the pulse. I have to do the assessment. I have to understand the gaps. We have to practice, get feedback, right? In that kind of way. And then you start to cut down on that, maybe, twice a week. By the second week and stuff, and then you can get into your weekly one-on-ones. But this is the job. People say, well, what if the person is complaining? What if they're right? Most of my hires do that. I often tell people all the time, look, if you're a leader of product people, man, your job is part-time therapist. Get over it. Product is hard. Working in our industry has always been hard and difficult. Folks come in every day, they are managing an infinite amount of customers, growing amount of stakeholders. They take emotional and verbal abuse from teams and customers and people screaming at them. You have to get good at that part of the job too as well. If people want to come in and talk, your job is to listen, to remind them why their work matters, to align them to the outcomes that are important. I'll leave you with this quote. It's always one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes, which is kind of, why do we waste our time hiring smart people to tell them what to do? We hire smart people to tell us what's possible. I have not made or discovered any greater waste in our industry than when we invest so much in hiring smart, competent, brilliant minds in product design and engineering. And we cannot get out the level of productivity and effectiveness from them because we never took the time to set them up for success. All right. You all have been fantastic. Thank you for the gift of your time and for listening and for supporting our work at SVPG.
Thanks, Christian. Thanks so much for a great talk.